Dear Final Fantasy, we first met back in 1997 when I was just a kid. I would have never guessed the impact our relationship would have on me. This is not a review. This isn't a retrospective. This is my story with Final Fantasy. Growing up as a kid, my family never really had a whole lot of money. Our dad was never in the picture, and it was always just my mom and us kids. And somehow my mom would always find a way to save up enough cash to get us kids awesome Christmas presents. And on Christmas Day 1997, I unwrapped a Sony PlayStation 1. Within weeks, I was making trips to and from the video store on my bicycle. And one day, I just so happened to rent Final Fantasy VII. I had no idea what Final Fantasy was because I was just a kid. I just remember this giant robot-looking thing on the cover with this blonde guy and a huge sword. And yeah, 8-year-old me thought the Shinra building was a giant robot. Either way, this is one of those times where judging a book by its cover actually paid off. 8-year-old me also didn't have a memory card, so every time I would get a game over, I would have to start the game all the way back at the bombing run. After about a year of renting Final Fantasy VII and leaving my PlayStation on overnight countless times, I finally made it to the motorcycle chase scene. I actually thought I was about to beat the game, only to have my mind blown that the game was just beginning and there was an entire world outside of Midgar. Unfortunately, it'd be a few more years until I got any further into the game. The next few years of my life got a little bit crazy. It was about this time in my life when my mom got involved with a really bad dude. Eventually, Child Protective Services came in and took all of us kids away. After about a year of us all being split up, one day my mom picked us up from school, and we ran away from town. Scared, excited, and happy all at the same time. When I got into the car, lo and behold, my mom packed my PlayStation. Unfortunately, I didn't own a copy of the game, but I was happy enough to be reunited with my family. And off we went, left town, never to look back. We spent about the next year living on the open road, sort of like modern-day gypsies. We jumped from homeless shelter to cheap hotel room, never staying in a town for more than a month. One day I got sick of daydreaming about what Cloud and company were up to, and I found myself a skateboard and I made my way downtown. There I found a video store that had a used copy of Final Fantasy VII. I begged my mom for a few dollars so I could pick it up, and lo and behold, she gave in. So a few months went by, with me progressing further and further into the game, thanks to my newly acquired memory card. Meanwhile, back in reality, we finally made our way over the state line. We laid low at one of my aunt's house while we waited out for the chance to make our final trip across the country. Early one morning, rushing to pack so we could hit the road, the copy of Final Fantasy VII that I fought so hard to get my hands on managed to slip away yet again. But don't worry, once we made it to our destination, about a year later my aunt mailed me my PlayStation, my controller, my memory card, and Final Fantasy VII. And this time, I actually got to beat the game. To this day, I even remember where I was when Eris bit the dust. My grandma's spare bedroom in the middle of the night. And that's right, I call her Eris because that's what 8-year-old me called her. So why am I telling you all this? Well, it's because Final Fantasy VII was my escape. It was my coping mechanism. It got me through some pretty crazy years of my life. And sometimes, honestly, the most memorable part of a game is what was going on in the real world while you were playing it. By the time I beat the game, I was 12 years old. It took me 4 years, and you better believe I enjoyed every minute of it. So thank you, Final Fantasy VII, for being my escape, and for keeping me company through some of the crazier years of my life. The summer came to pass and I was in a new place and had a new home. I was about to start yet another new school. The academic year began and I didn't think too much of it because I'd been in so many schools at this point it was almost irrelevant. It didn't really dawn on me that I was actually here to stay, so to speak, so I didn't really try too hard to make new friends. A few weeks into the school year, I was befriended against my will by a classmate that also lived near me. Eventually, I realized that his older brother was actually into video games, and upon finding his stash, I discovered Final Fantasy VIII. He would eventually go on to sell me his copy. Probably just to get me to shut up about Final Fantasy VII. Within 10 minutes of playing the game, I met Squall for the first time and I was hooked. It just clicked. Needless to say, some of the experiences that I had as a kid would go on to influence my teenage years. Growing up, I was always that weird, quiet, angsty kid that sat in the back of class. Naturally, this made Squall a very relatable character to me, as well as all the other now reformed 2000s era emo kids out there. Squall couldn't recall his past while I was trying to forget mine. Squall was trapped in Garden like I was trapped in junior high. He played Triple Triad while I played Yu-Gi-Oh! He was stuck with Zell like I was stuck with my dumb friends. Squall had Cypher while I had this Abercrombie and Fitch wearing stuck-up, preppy, popular, douchey, self-righteous. Yeah, you know what? You get the idea. Teenage angst, man. Never really goes away. But anyways, as crazy as this sounds, Squall's drive to become a seed was what eventually led me to go to college, and to this day inspires me to always be part of something bigger than myself, and to strive to be a leader, or at least the best leader I can be. It took me about a year and a half playing off and on to beat Final Fantasy VIII. I started it in 7th grade, and beat it for the first time the summer before my freshman year of high school, and picked it up for a second playthrough that following summer. Squall's eventual transformation helped me realize I needed to change, and stop being an angsty, weird, quiet kid that hated people. Squall letting go of his past and angst helped me to let go of mine, except for my Griever tattoo I got right after high school. I mean, what? So thanks, Final Fantasy VIII, for being a friend when I secretly needed one, and for showing me that much like Squall, my past doesn't determine my future. I can allow it to make me weaker or stronger. It's just up to me to decide which. Last but not least, there was Final Fantasy IX. I had a pretty cool first experience with it. It was my sophomore year of high school, and I was established in the new school, and I finally made some friends. My life had settled down, and times were good. Thankfully, all the chaos in my life had subsided, and I got to have a normal high school experience. One of my friends in high school was friends with this one popular preppy dude that was even on my high school's basketball team. Due to my squallish teenage angst, I didn't really like this guy. He never really did anything to me, he was just kind of an airhead. Well, one day I went over to my friend's house and this dude was there, and lo and freaking behold, they were playing Final Fantasy IX. Normally with this preppy dude hanging around, I would have told my friend I'd catch him later and take off. But this time I actually stuck around, and the three of us all played Final Fantasy IX together. Eventually Mr. Preppy Dude ended up letting me borrow it. Unfortunately, I never finished the game, but nonetheless, it was kind of mind-blowing that even Mr. Preppy Jock Dude played Final Fantasy. One of my goals since I was a kid was to finally beat Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. Finally, in 2018, I beat Final Fantasy IX for the first time, here on YouTube with all of you guys, and finally accomplished that goal after 20 years. And honestly, Final Fantasy IX had the best ending out of the entire franchise. It was a brilliant finale to the PlayStation era of Final Fantasy games, with references to Final Fantasy 1, 2, 7, 8, and a ton more. An entire generation of gamers were inspired, influenced, and impacted by the PlayStation Trilogy, and it's safe to say that if you were to look at Square Enix's modern-day lineup, the trilogy on the PlayStation 1 is by far their magnum opus. While everyone's clamoring over a Final Fantasy VII remake, I'm just over here thinking to myself, Square Enix, they can do all the remasters and remakes they want, but nothing, and I mean nothing, will ever be as good as our first impressions, our first experiences, the memories we made, the memories that we share with people. These games were my life. Anything they can do, as far as I'm concerned, will just tarnish these three pieces of history. Final Fantasy unites people from across the globe despite race, creed, or political ideology, and that's something the world needs more of today. Always remember, find a reason to carry on even when you've lost everything like Cloud did. Embrace change, open up, and learn to live a little like Squall. And even lowly thieves are capable of great things if they try like Zidane. Dear Final Fantasy, I just want to say thank you for being you. My journey is finally over.